Education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
Glad you're with us on this May 13th, 2025. I'm going to be joined today by Dr. Rob Lindsted, and then also a little bit later in the broadcast by Usama Dakdok and Shahram Hedian. President Trump touched down on Tuesday in Saudi Arabia. He had a very busy morning and signed some major deals with Saudi Arabia. In fact, it is being said that the deal he inked is the biggest arms deal in history to supply Saudi Arabia with $142 billion in a war chest. I guess we're going to be selling them military hardware, Saudi Arabia. I guess there's also some kind of letter of intent that's been signed by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who I guess went along with him. Now, this begs the question, how is this setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled? What does the Bible say about Saudi Arabia in the last days when so many nations are going against Israel, as described in the Old Testament book of Ezekiel? Joining me to discuss that before we add in the voices of Usama Dakdok and Shahram Hedian is Dr. Rob Lindsted. But before we go to Dr. Rob, remember our website, please, worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube.com. We have lots of shows from last night, lots of interviews I did last night on Brannon House Live that are posted there and on demand for you. Please also don't forget about our national conference coming up Friday night, October 3rd, Saturday, October 4th. If you go to, it's our 22nd annual national conference. If you go to worldviewstore.com, you'll find full details. Worldviewstore.com. I'll be speaking along with Alex Newman. Gordon Chang will be with us live in person. Everybody's in the building. Gordon Chang. Sidney Powell, former federal prosecutor, is going to talk about the weaponization of state agencies. It was the federal agencies. Now it's the state agencies, many of them, going and weaponizing against conservatives. And of course, it can all flip very quickly in another term. We'll be joined by Dr. Lana, Chris Martenson. He has so much to talk about with what's going on with the global economy and the quest for the Great Reset and how President Trump is disrupting that. Chris Martenson, he'll be with us. Also, we'll be joined by Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen. He's doing a lot of polling on where do Americans stand when it comes to a Christian worldview, Christian values. We'll get a feel for really the state of the worldview of America, America's worldview. What is it? All that and more this fall at our Understanding the Times conference. October 3rd and 4th. That's a Friday night and a Saturday in a suburb of Memphis, outside of Memphis in Collierville. It's a beautiful theater, only has 350 seats. So it is going to be a limited seating, which means you're going to have plenty of opportunity to walk up and visit with the speakers. And it's centrally located, has a very beautiful remodeled airport, by the way, mid-sized airport, easy to get in and out of. And we have all the hotel details, where to stay here in Collierville, all there. And then if you want to join us on Thursday night, we have our Worldview Foundation banquet on Thursday night, beautiful facility. And Hadia, former Muslim turned Christian who worked in national security, will speak. You don't want to miss that. I'll be doing a few songs, a few numbers with my grand piano and piano player. And I think we're bringing in some strings, full strings section this fall. So if you want to join us for that Thursday night banquet, that's optional. All the details are there at worldviewstore.com. All right, joined right now by Dr. Rob Lindsted. Dr. Lindsted, welcome back. Thank you for being with us.
Glad to be with you today.
So President Trump, they've inked a deal over there. the biggest arms deal in history with $142 billion for Saudi Arabia. I guess they're going to buy weaponry from us. Is that right? And how does this fit helping set the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled?
Well, it's a huge number, and it's so interesting because up until now, Saudi Arabia has always been, I'm going to say, the peaceful nation. They've had so much money, they haven't had to buy weapons. I think what they did is they bought friends. But for some reason now, they're kind of switching. And maybe it's because the friends that they had can't decide which side they're on. And so maybe they say, okay, we better get some protection ourselves. But it could also be the fact that they're living in the tinderbox. You know, they're a neighbor with Iran, they're a neighbor with Iraq, they're a neighbor with Turkey. They're sitting right there off the shoulder of Israel. And so this is an unbelievable deal. Matter of fact, remember, we used to talk about weapon sales, and they were in the millions. And then even earlier, I think this week or last week, they announced a $1.4 billion sale to UAE. This is 10 times that. This is $142 billion. You know what? No one in World War II even had that kind of budget. Now we're talking about one sale that way. And I think what's important is, so what does this mean? Well, first of all, the war technology that the world needs to maintain itself is coming from the U.S. And I think it was earlier this week, or perhaps it was the end of last week, Stanford University had a very serious charge against it. I think there were 48 violations of security where professors at Stanford, exchange students, graduate students, had been selling secrets and weapon news to the Chinese government. We all knew they were doing it, but this is the first time that we've actually been able to catch them, or maybe it's the first time the administration of the United States said, we're not going to allow that. Good for them. We shouldn't do that. Because don't you always wonder, how come all the planes look alike? How come all the boats look alike? How come all the helicopters? It's because they're all coming from the technology that's being stolen from America. And so I know that the Knesset went into a closed session, and I only know what was said because it was reported that among the things that they discussed, and there was quite concern that Turkey also is making major transactions of F-35s, the fighter jet. So here is Turkey really posed to fight against Israel, and they both had the same weapons, and they're bought from America because Turkey's buying theirs from us because they're a part of NATO. Here's Saudi Arabia loading up with arms. Here's UAE loading up with arms. Wow. What happens when all these countries buy arms? Well, it looks good for the bottom line of the economy of America, but is this really a safe world when so many people have these kind of weapons, let alone the nuclear weapons that now every nation is racing to get?
Well, and we got footage coming in now of President Trump. I guess he's headed to a state dinner. We got footage of that, him walking to the state dinner with the Crown Prince there. He's had a big day. Now, how do you think all this fits with setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled, Dr. Lindstedt?
Well, when I go to Revelation 17, I see that there's a big change of leadership because the leadership, they're frightened. The world conditions frighten them. And so I think it talks about how volatile, how quickly changing leadership would be. Next, in Revelation 18, it speaks of the fact that the merchants of the world were concerned because everything was built on money, and all of a sudden it collapsed. People said, okay, we're not going to buy these things and so on like that. And so I think those are two things, but I think the heart of the matter might be the Ezekiel 38 passage that you and I and Brother Andy Wood have talked about several times. Mm-hmm. I think that Sheba and Dedan, I really think are the Saudi Arabian area, and they always try to maintain peace. Matter of fact, I know one of the goals of this week is to get them back into the Abraham Accord, or get them into the Abraham Accord. But it just seems like they're always negotiating something, and the reason why they don't quite fit is because just prior to Trump going over there, by the way, I got up early this morning because I wanted to see him land. I wanted to see how he'd be greeted, and he was given a royal greeting. I was a little shocked when I saw that Elon Musk was there, so I'm looking at a picture with Trump.
And Sam Altman is there.
Yeah. So I guess they didn't invite us because we're not a billionaire.
No, I guess not. But did you know that apparently they are going to invest $20 billion, Saudi Arabia, $20 billion in AI data centers and our energy infrastructure here in the United States, according to the White House, $20 billion.
So I look at this, and don't get me wrong, I think Trump has done an amazing job. I think Elon Musk has done an amazing job. But it just seems like everything is for sale. And when everything is for sale, it says that it's not as stable. It's not because there's long-standing relationships between these countries. It's not because there's long-standing rulers who've developed trust over the years with each other. No, instead, friendships and alliances are being bought. And so it's almost like it's to the highest bidder. So you look at these rooms in which it's filled with these billionaires. And when you come to Ezekiel 38, it's interesting because here's Sheba and Dedan, and the thing that they're involved in is they come to take a spoil. They come to take money. They're interested in a bottom line. And so I saw that just prior to this whole meeting, the Saudi Arabia prince said that Palestine was a legitimate government, and he wants a two-state solution, and he's fixed on having a two-state solution. He's also now said, hey, we don't really want any of the Gazans or the Palestinians to come to our country, but we're perfectly willing to pay someone to take them, maybe Egypt. Well, see, to me, a real friendship it's not to do with money. We have common values. We have a common heritage. We have common principles that we're working to. And to me, some of these new alliances, Brennan, they don't have that. They're bought, they're put together simply by money and by the convenience of the moment. And that's why I'm a little worried that really this is anything that's going to be a lasting peace. I think it could be a disaster. I hope not, but I think it could be a disaster because there's no common values.
But I'm going to ask you when I come back, don't we see in Ezekiel that Saudi Arabia is kind of standing on the sidelines when Israel is attacked? I want to ask you about that when we come back. My guest, Dr. Rob Lindsted, BibleTipNow.org, BibleTipNow.org. And then we come back, we'll also add the voices of Usama Dakdok and Sharam Hadian. We'll add their voices to our conversation with Dr. Rob. And be sure to stay tuned for Crosstalk at the top of the hour with your host, Jim Schneider, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s. Over 100 outlets nationwide. We'll be right back.
It's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world. And it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com. We have now sent out I'm told as of last night, over 15,000 of these free Worldview Tube business cards. We're sending out packs of 20. You get a pack of 20 absolutely free. It's a great way for you to introduce family and friends to our program. It's a great way for you to maybe put one in your shirt pocket, a pack of them, or ladies in your purse. And if you're visiting with your person that cuts your hair, does your hair, or a waiter or waitress, and you think, well, I think they would probably benefit from listening to a broadcast like Brandon, give it to them. What do you got to lose? We're shipping them to you for free, and you're giving them away for free. And it's a great way to help us out. If you'd consider doing that, we sure would appreciate it. Get a pack of free business cards to pass out that tell people about the broadcast. You can get those at worldviewstore.com, worldviewstore.com, pack of 20. And if you use them all up, you can order another pack. We'll send them to you free of charge. Dr. Rob Lindstead joins me. Bible Tip Now stands for Bible Truth and Prophecy. BibleTipNow.org. Dr. Lindstead, do you think this is helping to set the stage where there's a friendly relationship between the United States and Israel with Saudi Arabia? So when the Gog-Magog scenario takes place, they don't get involved? Because I'm looking at a headline today from the Jewish News Syndicate that says, Smotrich, he says, it is one of their leaders over there, says Israel will not commit suicide for ties with Riyadh. Quote, if the Saudis want peace for peace, with a maximized win-win for everyone, we're very happy about that, end quote. That's what their Israeli finance minister said. Maybe all of this is setting the stage for Saudi Arabia to kind of be sitting there on the sidelines doing nothing during that Ezekiel 38-39 invasion of Israel by that coalition of nations. What say you?
Yeah, I think this setup is so incredible. It's what I call it in the fine details, because we know the central players in Ezekiel 38-39 are followers of Russia. It calls them the hordes of Russia. And they come against Israel, and they bring with them Iran. That's no surprise to us. They bring with them Turkey. That's no surprise. Matter of fact, here's Turkey hosting, Putin and Zelensky today. Think about this. All the big-time leaders are right there in a small little area, geographical area of the world. And they're meeting not just about the Middle East. They're meeting about Russia, Ukraine. They're meeting about Pakistan, India. It's just unbelievable. As someone said, one bomb could take them all out. That's how close they are together. But you see, right now, there seems to be just a little bit of friction between Israel and Saudi Arabia. That's where the United States comes in. We're the ones that are friends with Israel. We're pulling them toward the crown prince. The crown prince, he loves Trump. He wants to be the best friend of Trump and of America. And so really, America is the salve, the Vaseline that's putting these two together. They're not enemies, but they're not completely friends. And so I see that this passage in Ezekiel 38, it's amazing because Rosh comes with its enemies, the people we've named. But there's somebody who's not going with Russia. Instead, their alliance is really more with Israel than it is with Russia, more with Israel than it is Iran. And that's exactly the position that I think we're seeing negotiated at this hour. To me, what's taking place is the negotiations that line Saudi Arabia and Israel up. And not a perfect match, because Saudi Arabia right now is saying, well, we want a two-state solution. Well, we want to recognize the Palestinians. And that's not going well with Israel, for sure, and not even us. One of the stories that I woke up to this weekend was someone had posted that Trump wanted to recognize Palestine as a state. And did you see how fast that was backed down by the Trump?
Oh, yes, thankfully.
Yeah. I was sick at my stomach when I saw that, because I'm so opposed to that. The Bible's opposed to that. And they came back so strong and forceful saying, no, that's not true. So they go into these meetings with Saudi Arabia, not pretending to be anything other than ourselves. But I really believe that Trump is the arm between Israel and Saudi Arabia that's bringing them together to make them friends, so that when Rosh comes against them, I think that Saudi Arabia is sitting on the sideline and not an active fighter in that campaign. And I think it's going to spare their life. I think it's going to spare America's life if we can maintain that position.
Wow, great analysis. Hold there. Let's add in another voice or two here. Shahram Hadian, born and raised in Iran, former Muslim turned Christian. He's also pastor now. And then Usama Dakdog, born and raised in Egypt, never was a Muslim. His daddy planted Baptist churches all over Egypt before Muslim Brotherhood, i.e. Hamas, burned them to the ground. Gentlemen, welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you, Brandon.
Thank you for having me, Brandon.
By the way, we have big news. We'll be breaking tomorrow night. We have an interview tomorrow night. We paid for the investigation, travel, and we sent an individual undercover into some of the mosques in Texas, including Epic. So we'll be releasing to you, I have a written report I'm receiving this afternoon. And then tomorrow night, the individual will be revealed, and he will detail to us what he found, documented, recorded, and pictures of what is going on in those mosques in Texas, including that of Epic, which is Yasser Qadi. Would you respond to that first before we go back to the Middle East and Saudi Arabia and President Trump's trip? Would you respond to that, please, Shahram?
Well, Brandon, I think that, so first of all, I'm excited to hear what they're going to report, but we suspect that what they're going to report is what we see pretty well in the majority of mosques in America. Not to downplay it in any way, but I'm just saying that what we expect is that in those mosques, to their own people, where they do not lie to their own people, they're going to communicate their agenda for this nation, their hatred and animosity towards Jews and Christians, as they do daily in their prayers when they recite the first chapter of the Quran. And that information then needs to be given out so that we can label the entities that are wanting to overthrow our nation. But given the context of your conversation already in the program, it's going to be very difficult to do that with that information. We see the information about the Justice Department investigating Epic and that particular city, the claim coming out that Texas is going to not allow that city to be built. But there's a conflict, and that conflict has to do with the money that we're getting from Saudi Arabia, the money that we're getting from Qatar, the money that we're getting from Turkey. And so how do we stop this when at the same time we're becoming more and more beholden to these nations and allowing them further and further investment into America? I see a massive problem and a massive conflict. And we know that the mosques are the breeding grounds of fundamentalism. It's not radicalism, it's fundamentalism that promotes Sharia, promotes Islamic takeover, and they're getting bolder with their statements. But I'm very much looking forward to seeing what comes out of your report.
Well, we wanted to do it so that there was hard documentation of what are the books they're selling, what are the books they're promoting, what is that Epic something that's for Muslims only? That's a violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act, I think of 1968. So it'll be very interesting. Usama, before we get back to the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, what are your thoughts on what we've been...
Well, Brother Brennan, as we have shared that before, a good 16, 17 years ago when I started ministering with you, that Islam goes through stages. The early stages are gone. The early stages of the cancer of Islam, which is sadly spreading now in a bigger circle is gone. Now we're getting to the next steps. And the message which we used to hear from these mosques sometime in the Arabic language, now it is in the English language. It is open in your faith, like it or not. That's why we're here. We're not going anywhere. And we're here to settle, and we're here to take over. This is Islamic community, which is the ultimate goal for them, is to separate themselves from the Americans for two reasons. Because he found out when you do not separate and you melt in this melting pot, you lose your own people, you lose your own youth, you lose your future. And that's why these Muslims want to build these communities, because they want to be inside America, but separated from America. They will be Muslims first and last. And it's getting bigger and bigger. And I agree with Brother Trump that we cannot hold the stick in the middle. I mean, I know that we have a problem with allowing even Muslims in America to have the call of prayer in some of these mosques out loud, the speaker. But in the same time, Mr. Trump allowed that Muslim man in the day of prayer to pray in a loudspeaker, quoting Quran chapter 1, which is a clear message that they are here because the Jews are the one whom the wrath of Allah is against, and Christians are lost. So you cannot have it this way. Will you allow Muslims to pray in the Rose Garden in the White House, or and at the same time you don't want them to have microphone in their own mosque? That does not make any sense. I'm sorry to say that doing business with these Muslims overseas or here in America, it is bringing cancer to America in a bigger circle. They will continue to grow in number. They will grow in power. And the Quran is very clear. Do not call for peace. Quran chapter 47 and verse 35. Do not call for peace when you have the upper hand. We are helping them to have the upper hand. We're helping them to become stronger in the country. At the same time, we want to hold into America. You cannot have it both ways.
And we're being told now that President Trump is, according to the Reuters, has secured $600 billion in Saudi investment pledge on this Gulf tour. Do you believe, however, that the Saudi prince is he moderating in some ways? I mean, that's what we're told. Is he at all moderating, Usama? And if so,
how? He is moderating according to the word of Allah in Quran chapter 3 and verse 28. We call that the verse of taqiyya. He needed us. He have a bigger problem near him. It's called Iran. Saudi needed America. And we have this expression in the Middle East, in the Muslim world, you know it very well. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. We are enemy with Iran, and we are enemy of Saudi. Well, we're not enemy of Saudi because we choose to be enemy. We're the enemy of Saudi because we're a Christian nation, at least a Christian and Jewish nation as the picture outside. So Allah in the Quran 5:51 taught the Muslim, do not take the Jews and Christian for friends. If you don't take me for a friend, I'm automatically your enemy. This is a reality. But since he have a bigger problem, which is Iran, he will buy as much weapon from the United States of America, and he will continue to do business with America, and that is called temporary peace or temporary business deals. If he found out Israel can take Iran out, I promise you, all this wonderful relationship between the Saudi and the United States of America will end. But he needed us, he needed Israel. Otherwise, what Saddam Hussein could not do years ago before Desert Storm, Iran will do. They can walk into Saudi and take over the entire peninsula. And that will be the biggest hard day for Saudi and for the Muslim in the peninsula.
Let's get a response from Shahram and Dr. Linster. We come back, including what did President Trump say his job was, and what did he say is God's job when it comes to judging nations and their leaders? Very interesting comment by President Trump today. I want you to hear it when we come back. Worldview Radio, our website, worldviewradio.com.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
Welcome back. Glad you're with us. Let's go right away to a video, an audio or radio of President Trump saying today in Saudi Arabia what his job was and what is the job of God, as we talk about how President Trump's Middle East trip, his Gulf tour, could be setting the stage for the fulfillment of Bible prophecy, as the Bible seems to indicate that when the coalition of nations comes against Israel, Saudi Arabia is sitting on the sidelines. Watch and listen to what President Trump had to say today.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, you know, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength, otherwise bad things could happen. But hopefully we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them, but hopefully we'll never have to use them because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
All right. What do you make of that, Dr. Lindstedt?
Well, it's a great statement, and God will judge. He's absolutely correct on that. I, like Usama, I'm concerned because it is compromise. What we have in common is not a belief. It's not a foundation. It's a business deal. And the trouble with a business deal, someone can always make a better offer. I agree. The only reason that they're coming to us is because up until now, they have not had a strong military in Saudi Arabia. Now, all of a sudden, they need one. So rather than develop it, they're going to buy it. And I don't blame them. I guess if I had that much money, maybe I'd try to buy it too. But it's not because we have a common heritage. We don't have a common goal. We don't have, you can't point to things that are in common other than the fact we have a business deal. And to me...
And the same shared enemy, Iran, right?
Yes, yeah, that's right. And Iran is a disgusting, invasive power taking advantage of its own people and anyone else. And so this is just a quick way for them to say, okay, we're up to power. So now they're not threatened by Iran moving to them just the way they're trying to move to Israel or to try to occupy in Syria. There's no real basis of friendship. And so I'm concerned, but I do think it sets up the end time. Because, again, that's Ezekiel 38, to separate them from the invasion of the hordes of Rosh into Israel, they're clearly distinct and separate. And I think we're seeing them make that statement, them make that position. But he's exactly right. If you live by the Quran, then you're not a friend of Israel, you're not a friend of America, and you're anti-God. And so we don't have a foundation the same as we do, let's say, as we talk to Israel.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Usama, real quick. I got to get to Shraman here. On the screen today, next to President Trump, was a green flag with a sword. Is that Arabic? And if so, what is that?
Sure.
What's that wording?
It is the foundation of Islam. La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God except Allah. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah with the sword below it. That is the same flag we have for ISIS. It's the same flag we have for Al-Qaeda. It is their foundation. And if you examine the saying of Muhammad, which the Muslim Saudi believe in, I have been commanded by Allah to engage in war with people until they say there is no God except Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. So how can you have peace with people who believe in our annihilation?
Shahram, how many of our mosques are funded here in America by Saudi Arabia?
It's hard to know directly by the Saudis, because we know that the majority are owned by the Muslim Brotherhood. You know, somewhere between 78% and 80% are owned by the Muslim Brotherhood, and that, of course, historically, a lot of that funding has come from Saudi Arabia. But as I said earlier in the last segment, we have seen that funding also from Qatar, from Qatar. We say Qatar. We've seen that funding also from Turkey. Turkey is now the preeminent lead of the Muslim Brotherhood. But, and I certainly agree with what Dr. Lindsay said about the Saudis are not included, and I believe that prophetically the Saudis are not included. Sheba and Dedan that are mentioned there in Ezekiel 38, I think most people agree would be Saudi, and they're not included in that war. So prophetically that is setting up. But Iran is the Shia threat in the Middle East. In my opinion, Turkey is now the Sunni threat to the world, but so the Saudis are weakening in that sense, even though they're the birthplace of Islam. But the teaching. So one is the funding that you asked. The second is the teaching. What is the main teaching that is coming out of our mosques in America? The mosques in America, the majority are navigating towards Salafism or Wahhabism. And that's what the contribution of Saudi Arabia is the Wahhabism or Salafism, which is the strictest interpretation of Islamic school in Sunni Islam. And that interpretation will lead to fundamentalism. That interpretation will lead to, hatred of the Jews, persecution of Christians, imposition of Sharia law. And the very people of Iran, again, also let's make sure we separate the people of Iran from the government of Iran. The very people of Iran right now that are saying death to Islam, death to Khomeini, we're done with it. And in fact, I just read an article today that the people of Iran who have been secretly interviewed and polled are saying, why is Israel hesitating in attacking us? And I think that Trump right now is perhaps holding up the strategic targeting of Iranian sites, potentially the explosion at the port in Bandar Abbas, and other targets. I think that's being held up because you have Jared Kushner that has taken billions of dollars from the Saudis in his fund. You have Steve Witkoff that the Qataris bought out his hotel when he was upside down for over $630 million. Steve Witkoff goes and meets with the Iranian mullahs and the regime and says, I looked in their face and I believe them when they say they're not going to build the bomb. I mean, talk about a fool. And one who doesn't understand Islam and doesn't understand that these Arab ayatollahs in Persian Iran are, of course, going to lie and say, we don't want to build a bomb. So you have the influence of Qatar and Saudi and Turkey in American mosques that are now driving fundamentalism.
So let me ask you this.
Islam is not moderating. Islam is going more fundamental, as it has been since the overthrow of Iran in 1979.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Is President Trump here, though, is he trying to set up America so America can deal with Iran if it has to? In other words, don't we need to land some aircraft in Saudi Arabia, Shahram? Don't we need to know that they're going to, help us if necessary, if Israel, and I hope we don't, because I think it could bring real problems for America. But if America has to go after Iran with Israel, or if Israel has to do it, is this, again, President Trump trying to lay the relationships economically for America, but also laying the foundation for our military to be able to move and act in the Middle East if necessary? Is that not what he's doing in part here? And he's not telling us, Shahram?
It could be. It could be that they're looking at a strategic line. But of course, as you know, there was a lot of information coming out that there was rift, right, between Mike Waltz and the portion of the administration that was in favor of supporting Israel and hitting Iran, and potentially there being some hesitation on the president's part to do that. But and listen, I am in favor of a diplomatic relationship with the Saudis in allowing them to, for example, like you said, if we're giving them weapons, then they allow us to be able to, have a military base or land our planes or refuel or whatever to the strategic partnership there. What I'm not in favor of is, number one, their investment in America. They're for the sake of, quote, jobs, we're allowing these Islamic nations with all this wealth to buy up America, to buy up our politicians, and that's why they're turning a blind eye to the takeover of America by Islam, by the red-green axis. And number two, I'm not in favor of a spiritual agreement. The Abraham Accords, which Trump talked about again today, and wants Saudi to sign on to the Abraham Accords, is a spiritual document. And I know others have disagreed with me, but I encourage you to read the document itself. It is not just diplomatic, it's a spiritual document that says we're going to bring together the three great Abrahamic faiths. And no Christian should support that document, potentially paving the way for the Daniel 9 covenant. But I agree with you 100% that yes, if he's looking at it diplomatically, strategically, we need the airspace, we need the land because we can then launch from Saudi. Sure, that could be the case. But there is a spiritual conflict of there's a political spiritual conflict of interest, and we haven't even talked about the $400 million plane.
All right, let's get to that in a second. Here we go. We got an article from Headline USA. Senators Cotton and Graham, Senator Tom Cotton, Lindsey Graham, are working to sabotage the chances of an Iranian deal. Well, these guys, I think, want to go to war. Quick comment before we go to break, Dr. Lindstedt, and then we'll get to the plane. Dr. Lindstedt?
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants a nuclear war. But at the same time, it looks to me like we said, if Iran does this, this is what's going to happen. Why do we back down? And I really think America lost face. I think Trump lost face because he kind of drew a line in the sand and then he moved the line. Iran saw that as weakness, and so I think these gentlemen are exactly right. We're in a compromised position. The Abraham Accord is a spiritual document. I like how he says that. It's true. We don't have a common foundation. You can go back to Abraham and call it back to Abraham, but the truth is, Abraham doesn't have a common spiritual background with Islam, and so we're on shaky ground. And the only thing that's holding this up is that we're being bought. We had a fit 4 years ago when people saw that China was buying land. We had a fit 3 or 4 years ago when we saw that Bill Gates was buying up all the cattle. We should have a fit now that here's people and they're buying political influence. That's what they're doing. They're buying political influence. It's wrong.
And interesting, right now while you were talking, my Red Alert app was going off with rockets going into Israel, which is interesting because it was going off about an hour and a half ago. And other than once last week on Friday, my rockets went off when we were literally standing next to the Pentagon, my Red Alert app went off. Part of that, they've been kind of quiet. So I find it interesting that today, while Trump is in the Middle East, we got rockets going into Israel. We'll be back with a comment from Usama. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at www.foundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
All right, so what's going on over there in Israel right now is supposedly the IDF has hit a hospital in Gaza trying to go after who they think is the man next up to lead Hamas, and that would be Yahya Sinwar, the brother of, they were going after Mohammed Sinwar, who would replace his brother, Johan Sinwar, as the new leader. So there you go. Usama?
Well, I was going to say, just to tie what my dear brothers said earlier, Muslims invest in the West, not for the love of the West, but they actually practicing jihad. We look at Saudi in America. Saudi are not practicing jihad in America, when in reality, if you examine the 10 verses of the Quran, where Allah said, those who believe immigrated, perform jihad with their money and with their lives. So for Saudi to spend $1 billion or $1 trillion in America, it is actually performing jihad with money. You do not have to perform jihad in Islam by shedding your life, by shedding your blood, or dying for the sake of Allah. But you can pay. Money also play a big role in jihad, because as that's why Allah actually started with jihad with money before jihad with life. Because without money, how in the world America can be taken by the Saudi or any other Muslims? So money spent here in America, it is not for the love of America. It is actually one type of jihad, the most important type of jihad. And if you look at it in the long run, there'll be plenty of Muslims in America to take over America.
And literally, while we're on the air, we are getting reports that maybe indeed the what was supposed to be the next leader of Hamas has reportedly been killed, which would explain, they killed his brother, the leader of Hamas. Now I guess they were going after what they thought would be the next leader of Hamas, his brother. And that may explain why the rockets are flying into Israel today. So things are heating up over there a little bit today. Dr. Lindstedt, I guess we're going to get a report on Brandon House Live by our Israeli reporter. Logan, can you reach out to him for tonight, please? Dr. Lindstedt, response to all this?
Yes, I do think that earlier today they listed the fact that they were going to target the next leader, and they always try to give some warning, and so evidently they found him. I'm not surprised he was found in a hospital. A hospital or school is normally where they hide, and I think they have to take it out. Matter of fact, I'm convinced that Ben-Gvir and others, conservative element of the Israeli government, they now see that there's never going to be an end to the situation in Gaza until they completely take Gaza apart. They've got to dismantle it from top to bottom. There's no way to leave part of it there, because they'll go back, they'll rebuild the tunnels. One of the proposals recently was a 5-year deal, 5-year ceasefire. And everyone knew, don't do that, because they will build the tunnels back, they'll build everything back. It's got to be dismantled stone by stone, brick by brick. It has to be torn apart. That's the only way to do it. This is, I think, the beginning of that process.
Bo Loudon, his mother's Gina Loudon, who I know her. I don't know Bo, but I think he's good friends with President Trump's son, Barron. He put out this. Imagine being 78 years old, having built one of the most successful businesses ever, hosting a legendary reality show, being president, having an election stolen, being indicted, arrested, and even shot, and ending up here, in all caps, bringing world peace. I don't know, Dr. Lindstedt, I don't know if we're going to see world peace, but I do think there's going to be a man that shows up on the world scene that finally confirms a peace treaty, and maybe it's that political, spiritual document, in part with the Oslo Accords and others. But that's kind of what we're seeing the stage being set for, someone to confirm that peace treaty, right, Dr. Lindstedt?
And that flag, I don't know about you, but if I were Trump, I would not want my picture with that flag and that sword. It's almost a mockery to say we're talking about peace, and then you're in front of a flag and a sword that.
And did you notice the sword? The sword had the tip pointing toward President Trump. Why would they not make the tip of the sword point away from him? It was pointing at him while he was at the podium.
You know, symbols are important, and so here we are. We're trying to set up peace, and we're doing it with the sword. And so, you know, the brothers here, they understand Islam. They understand their thinking far better than I do. But I've been in the Middle East enough to know that you don't believe what you hear, you believe what you see. And so they're ignoring some signs because everyone wants peace. I think that last little clip you gave, you know, it's like here's the last thing Trump could do. He's done everything else. Let's make peace. Well, peace comes through the Prince of Peace, and right now there's not going to be peace in the Middle East. Anyone who thinks there's peace, they're being tricked, they're being fooled, they're being lied to. It's going to take an antichrist, someone who's going to win both sides, and they're going to trust him. Who that will be, I don't know. I'm not going to try to predict who that is. I think there's some candidates, but they're going to lie enough, they're going to compromise enough, they're going to have the favor of both sides. They're going to try to bring it together, and guess what? It still doesn't work. There's not going to be peace there. It can't happen by decree. It comes by fundamental beliefs and personal values. That's what brings peace.
And even the Antichrist, when he gets into power, is going to have to rip out the roots of 3 of these, you know, probably 10 Federation nations, their leaders, to get the New World Order. Closing comment from you, Usama?
Well, they call for peace or they cry for peace, and the Bible said there will not be peace. I cannot believe there will ever be peace. Abraham Accord or not, I'm sorry. Abraham, according to the word of Allah in the Quran, was a Muslim Hanifan. He was not a Jew, he was not a Christian. And it's amazing that these people are willing to say, well, he is the father of, you know, the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Muslim faith, the 3 branches of Abrahamic tree. No, Abrahamic tree have one branch, and that branch is Islam. I'm sorry to believe any lies Muslims say, and they know they're lying. It's just they need somebody to stand up against their lies with the word of Allah in the Quran. Say, I'm sorry, that's not what the Quran said. You don't believe in it. And if it will be peace, it will be a temporary peace until the Muslim has the upper hand, and then we'll go back to square one.
Usama is thestraightway.org, thestraightway.org. Sharam is tillministry.com, right? Right, Sharam?
Yes, sir. Tillministry.com.
And BiblesTipNow.org. Hold right there, gentlemen, for just a couple more minutes on the other side. That does it for us here on the VCY America Radio Network. Their website, by the way, is vcy.org. Stay tuned for Crosstalk with the host, Jim Schneider, America's original Christian talk program since the 1970s at vcy.org. Our website, worldviewradio.com, where you'll find lots of MP3s. And if you like watching it, it's worldviewtube.com. Thanks for being with us. Take care. May God save America. And we're back with WROS out of Jacksonville, Florida, and with Worldview Tube. So let me get a comment from each of you, gentlemen. How are you interpreting these days right now? Do you think God, Dr. Lindstedt, is giving us a little reprieve? And what do you see coming? Do you see us doing a whipsaw back to the Biden regime? Or do you see a kinder, gentler, to use the phrase of George H. Bush, a kinder, gentler globalism coming in that looks like freedom, feels like freedom, smells like freedom, but is really digital control? What do you see, Dr. Lindstedt?
Yeah, I think it's a friendlier restriction of freedom, because the truth is, the reprieve that we have at this moment, this hour, I think is so that we examine what do we really believe. And we need to teach that to our children. We need to recommit ourselves to God's word, because God's word has the plan that's going to withstand time. And so I think that I know a lot of my friends say, the rapture can't be for 5 years, 20 years. No, it could be at any time, because we're taken out and then these things come. So I believe it's an opportunity for us to examine what we truly believe, what we're truly teaching in our churches and to our families. I think it's also a great opportunity to win others to Christ. You see, people around the world, I don't care if I'm in Sam's or in a fast food store, the minute people see me, they say, hey, I got a question about Bible prophecy. They know that what we're talking about is in the Bible. This is our chance to win them to Christ. So I don't think we can let up. I think this is the time. Satan was a deceiver. And I think that we're more open for deception now than we've ever been in our whole history.
Shahram, what do you think? Oh, Shahram had to jump. Usama, what do you think?
Well, I believe the Bible is very clear, as it used to be in Noah's days and before Sodom and Gomorrah destruction. Everything was fine. I mean, people are eating, marrying, enjoying life. And I believe we are close in. I don't believe that life will continue for a longer time, but I believe that is calmness before the storm. There were not any unusual sign or condition for the people of Noah before the rain came down and the flood covered the entire earth. So it is in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're getting close in. We're going to be distracted by all these things, but in reality, it's going to happen suddenly, quick.
Well, again, I want to recap. Israel has just carried out an assassination attempt on Mohammed Sinwar, the brother of Yahya Sinwar, guessed to be the leader of Hamas. And we'll see if it was successful or not. 9 bunker buster bombs were dropped on the target, we're told. Here's the official joint IDF and ISA announcement. A short while ago, the IDF and ISA conducted a precise strike on Hamas terrorists in a compound and control center located in the underground terrorist infrastructure site between the European hospital in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The Hamas terrorist organization continues to use hospitals in the Gaza Strip for terrorist activity. Of course they do. Of course they do. So anyway, it's escalating over there while Trump is in the Middle East. And I think it's all setting the stage for Bible prophecy to be fulfilled. I find this very fascinating. And I think Americans should understand what it is going on, particularly Christian Americans. I want to thank all two of you that are still here for joining us, Dr. Lindstedt and Usama Daktak. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. If you appreciate what we're doing here, folks, we need your support. WorldviewFoundation.com. Look at how much content we put out. Look at all the content we are cranking out every day. I think we're producing like 12 shows now. And now we're looking and endeavoring to start a history aspect, a history channel aspect to our network. Lots and lots of programming coming from what we filmed for 8 days while on the road last week. And we're doing more. We have more trips planned, Logan and I and the team, to grab the footage necessary to really grow the idea of a history channel, adding that to our programming. Because it is a battle for the mind. It's a worldview war. A lot of lies out there about America, America's history, America's founding. A lot of lies about men many of them who were Christians. Some who maybe, well, I don't know if they were Christians or not, but they certainly embraced the idea of the laws of nature and nature's God, right and wrong, the general principles of Christianity. Aren't these things you think we should be talking about and programming a network accordingly? Well, the only thing that limits us, folks, is the financial support to do it and to keep pushing it out for free. Will you go right now, please? WorldviewFoundation.com and make a contribution. You're not going to see Fox News, Newsmax. None of them are going to do a program like you just heard with those 3 gentlemen, bringing the Christian worldview and Bible prophecy analysis on the Middle East and Trump's Gulf tour. You're not going to get that just about anywhere. Certainly not live like we do day in and day out. We need your support now. Please, worldviewfoundation.com. You'll also find our mailing address there if you prefer to support us through the mail. Talk to you tonight on Brandon House Live and the Worldview Report. Take care.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 30